welcome to another episode here at Lighting Bot. We have our co-host Jeremy and Chris doing funny poses. Slightly reminds me of Dragon Ball Z for some reason. There's like this team of people in exactly. They go like this and they don't go like this. So that's basically what happens there. Today we are talking about side hustle. We're talking about money, I suppose. We're talking about how to navigate that world, as well as a few other things. So, if you have any questions, do feel free to ask those questions. If it's other questions related to game development, probably I'll ignore it, as I did last time. So try and stay in topic when you ask questions. That way we can stay, focus on what we want to talk about today. If you had any question, you can join Discord. There's two different Discords. There's DiNusty Empire and there is mine at Lighting Bot. So there's two different places you guys can go to ask questions. As usual, please like and subscribe. And if you are watching at the moment, please share so more people can come and share the knowledge and have their insight and ask the questions. All right. Thank you. So, let me see. What was the notes? What are we talking about?
I don't know, man.
I mean, the intro that you gave on it was really good. It was so good. I used it for the server.
Thank you. Let's go to your server and have a look then. What did we say?
Okay, so we're going to be looking at working within a company and clearance to do so, right? So hobby versus high income, taxes, suggestions on managing the income, time management, and life balance. Exactly. And then I guess just topics in general about freelance, if that stuff comes up.
So
I guess we could,
yeah. Chris, you obviously have an opinion about it. Chris, hello, why don't you go first?
Obviously, haven't even worked freelance even one day in my life, I think. Well, I do mentorships, but I guess
mentorships. In my
opinion, we could talk about like.
Okay, so since you mentioned that, obviously, as usual in our streams, let's define what we mean by side hustle first. Then.
Yeah, I think that would be the best, and different types of side hustles, right?
Yeah, it could be any kinds. So what, Chris? What would you define as a side hustle?
Few things. We talked about it. Freelancing, content creation of any kind, right? Like YouTube, indie game development,
right?
Like if you make online courses or workshops, if you work or make assets for like marketplaces.
Yeah, so a lot of that type of content revolves around like finding a way to make secondary income, right? Outside of like your full-time type of stuff. So that, to me, that's how I kind of define side hustle, is like if you're trying to push to make extra income. Like, for example, the Empire did not start as like me trying to make money. It was me trying to make myself accountable and force myself to do art to grow my own skills. And then it's just kind of turned into whatever it's turned into. It's a community for people, right? But to some degree, it does bring in money now. So that's something that you have to deal with as it comes. But Amit, go ahead.
Yep. So we're talking about side hustle just being a side income. Now, let's talk about mindset. So when we say side hustle and side income, that means you're not really fully committed to it. Like you have a primary income and you have a little bit on the side, right? When we talk about business, we're talking about you're more committed. You have a very clear idea of what you're doing with something that might become your primary income or is somehow one way or another consuming a lot of your time other than your day job, for example, or evening job. Okay, so that's the two differentiation between high hustle and business. It's important to mention that because when you receive professional mentorship or coaching in side hustling versus business versus freelancing, there is a clear difference. So freelancing is a side hustle, business is also side hustle, but normally freelancing, it means you are the person involved alone. Side hustle could mean still that maybe one or two other people are involved. And business means you have a lot of legal things in order. There's a clear strategy, and it kind of runs on its own as well. Okay, so these are the three differences we also want to clarify today. So, Jeremy, what kind of side hustle have you tried?
Have I tried?
Yeah. So it doesn't mean if you've succeeded or if you did a little bit and then you stopped. What have you tried?
I mean, I think actively doing my mentorships has felt like where I was like, okay, it's not me going out to make money. It's me offering my time to help people, right? And I've had to tell myself that I'm not going out to make the money. I'm doing this as like educational stuff, but it takes up my free time, which means that I should probably charge for it to some degree. I think that's the only real side hustle I've actually pushed on. Like I guess we have the merch stuff from the Empire. There are certain points in the Empire that have just expanded out just enough that there's something coming in from it. And those you could argue are side hustles. But yeah,
Okay.
it's not too extreme as of this point.
Whatever else to me that nobody pay. That's funny. So okay, so we have different experiences. Obviously, we also talked to a couple of people for the last couple of days on how things are run across different countries, especially in terms of freelancing. So we have a general idea of how that works. What's he saying, Jeremy? You have a potential client, Jeremy.
Oh my god. Okay, yeah.
You're welcome. Because it's happening through my channel, that's 30% of cut.
Yeah.
Me. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
contract, yeah.
So this is how you do business, all right? This is how you grow your side income. Okay, you take at least 30% of whatever you're channeling through something, right? I actually used to do it back in the days as well, quite actively when I was doing. I would even recruitment. If I recommend something to a recruiter, I would take up to $1,000 for recommending someone if they get hired. So that's a side hustle. That's a side income. You're helping someone, but you also understand that you are being a valuable resource for someone else that's benefiting from it professionally. It's the full-time job, and you're giving them some value. So if you know the recruitment business, they get paid based on how much the person earns, right? And if they get hired. And in your case, if you recommend them, a lot of companies will give you like $100, $500 at most, probably, when you recommend something internally in the company as well. So those are like good things that you always should ask, even if not offered. Right. So already there you have a side hustle. So say you work in a company and you want some extra cash and they're looking for someone. Say, hey, I might know a couple of people. Okay. And then you mention them, but you also agree with the company that you work at that, hey, maybe I could get a little bonuses, finder's fee. Right. It doesn't hurt to ask. Okay. It also reveals a little bit about the company you're in the way of how they treat you and how they reward you for helping building up, the team, basically. Do you two have any similar ideas or way of getting any side income?
I mean, there's, like Chris was mentioning earlier, there's the like posting on marketplaces, not just Unreal, but like Unity, like ArtStation, looking to just expand your content, that basically places where people can pay. That's, to me, that's getting a bit of a side hustle. I guess some of the more recent stuff that I've looked at that I thought was quite interesting is email systems, where you basically are posting an article that pushes to people's emails, and then maybe it posts to Twitter, or like you post it somewhere else as well, and you kind of just gather people into one place. And then if you have like a content, like you did a tutorial and you want to post, and the tutorial's paid, it's like $5 or something like that, you can send it through that thing now and actually contact all those people about it.
Right. I mean, back in the days,
that's an old school way of doing it, I think.
It's definitely old school, but also you could make some revenue from YouTube channels, and now also Twitter, actually, Twitter tweets, or X. It's not Twitter anymore, apparently.
Oh yeah, right.
And Quora is a very good platform of making income based on your knowledge. I've been active there since startup, and it's a good way of building your brand as well to help people, but also get paid for certain tweets that are high value. You can also have a membership area in Quora, which is you can have a community there, and you could offer some different content, paid and unpaid. A good way of getting side hustle, side income there as well for people. YouTube used to be easy. YouTube used to be easy, but now it is a very strict requirements, and it takes a lot of effort to become on the monetizing stage. I think they simplified it a little bit now, but I still think it's 1,000 subscribers and 1,500 to 4,000 hours. So, for example, Lightningbot has 0 monetization on our YouTube because we don't have that many hours watched, which is why you should like and subscribe right now and share the link at the very least, because there's 0 money from doing this. So you have to put a lot of effort. Like Lightningbot channel has over 100 hours of content, give or take. My own YouTube channel has also over 100 hours. So you're doing a lot for nothing. So is it a viable option today as a side hustle? I wouldn't say so, because you really need to be committed as a professional streamer, I think, to really get that kind of income now on these kind of areas. Jeremy, you were about to ask a question.
Oh, I was going to say one of the common things you see on YouTube now is like, so you mentioned a platform, so you're promoting it, right? If you talk to them, you could maybe get a URL that you could put in the comments of this video, and you could mention it, and then when people click on that, if they go and they sign up, or there's some deal, you get like a kickback. That's a bit of a side hustle that I actually see quite a bit of on like common YouTube channels that I frequent.
Collaboration is a very good side hustle in general. But again, side hustle, this is a topic I don't think I've told Jeremy and Chris yet, but side hustle and earnings doesn't have to be money. It could be reputation. It could be influence,
connections.
Right? A lot of people are very money oriented, and I think that's fine. But at the long range, what happened to
the
my
long term?
Long term,
long term influence. That kind of currency is very often more valuable than money. So here you can build it even more easily. You can help people on Discord, you can help people on Twitter, you can elevate other people. That has proven psychologically to make people like you more automatically. It's a very good way of building followers. So if you, for example, are on Twitter or X, and you retweet someone else and talk highly about someone else, psychologically they will like you automatically more, and that's like a way of building genuine connections. You help someone you like, they help you, and you kind of build each other up in the long run. And that's a good way of building trust, which is also again a valuta to build up, because if people trust you, they know about you, that is a price much higher than money can buy quite often. You can do a lot with it. I think, Jeremy, you probably have some opinion on that too, I guess, because you do your streaming, and I'm sure you've noticed over time, 5 years from now, and now there's a certain level of difference between not doing any streaming to doing some streaming.
Yeah, I mean, you mean in regards of like the people that I interact with?
Yeah, because like, it's a currency.
You have the regular people that always show up. There's
You're building a relationship.
There's people competing for like first message in chat, which I always find really funny. But it's like it's the thing that I really love is community building and like getting people together that are like-minded or trying to grow into like environment artists or game dev just in general. That's, I think, as I've continued to stream, like the reason, in our server we have the Emperor Maru, my dog. Literally the only reason our dog exists and this household is because of the Discord, because of the art community. They found out I wanted a Dachshund, a wiener dog, a Tax, wherever you're from, and then bam, they're like, here's a link, and then the next weekend we were going and looking at him and came home with him. So that's value right there.
That's great.
Yeah, definitely. There is a lot of ways to do things. I think, as someone mentioned chat earlier, I think as well for portfolio art stuff, ArtStation Marketplace. Um I'm a bit careful with selling, depending on what you do. Like from a lighting artist point of view, I would be very careful of doing. It has crossed my mind. I am checking it up, which is less about money, but about having an art gallery of my lighting work. So submitting it and seeing if they display it. That there is a certain danger of certain artwork, especially if you're doing like mega scans type of work and organizing it. You kind of have to check a lot about copyright and ownership, and if you can get away from actually earning money, you might be okay. But again, the minute money is involved, there's different laws, there's different criteria for it, right? So understanding that when you do any kind of side hustle, be it for money or reputation or credit or whatever, you have to be quite careful and knowing that. It's similar to the book offer. I had a book publishing deal, and I declined it for the time being because I have to do all of the reference checking myself, and I have to get all the credit, and I have to do all of that myself on top of writing. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. That's a lot of work to get that permission, finding the emails. It sounds easy, but that's a lot of work. So book writing, ebooks, a good way of generating some side hustle income. So maybe you have an expertise. So if you ignore imposter syndrome and you have done it something for a while, there's always someone willing to pay something for it, or at least have access to it, right? It could be anything. It could be 3D, it could be concept art, it could be lighting, it could be how to be a tech artist, how to be a lead. Is probably not a lot of content for that, for example. So that's probably something I would consider recommending someone doing. There's a book about art direction, but that's not necessarily how to be a lead in a certain role. So what else do we have? We have the whole concept of doing side hustle, but also dealing with your company. So most of you guys are employed, I would assume.
Yeah.
So how much can you do while you're employed? Certain companies are very strict in limiting you. Other companies are very open, and that's how they recruit you. Codemasters since last year have been quite actively recruiting people, and one of the sales pitch they have is you can do whatever you want on the side. We don't care, and that's
that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's a big thing. I think that's something you should ask early. Like if you're interviewing for a company, that's totally one of the questions you should ask early, and you should definitely check that on in the contract in general, what it says, in particular.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're not being blocked from being able to even express yourself in art online. I've known of companies that have completely locked you down. Like everything you create is theirs, and they don't like you to show it either.
Yeah, I think Filippo says, I think from my experience, it's much easier to live as a freelancer if you're a generalist. Most of the times, the project your client needs go from concept to render. I would argue there's more competition if you're a generalist, and the more competition there is, the lower the price needs to be to compete. So you can go to outsourcing studios, which I won't mention their names, but I've done like 4 of them. If you have a high price, they have a harder time of getting you the project versus if you have a lower price, right? Because they have to give a total budget price in that context anyway, and then they have to have a top-on price on top of your price to make sure they make the money for getting you the projects, right? Which is very common. I had an outsourcing company for a while. I had 55 people, and I found it very tedious, very exhausting. It was not worth the time or the money, and that's when I started lighting. But right afterwards, I was like, yeah, this isn't worth it. It's you have to talk a lot, you have to negotiate, you have to undercut, you have to undervalue people. You have to find people who are cheap and affordable, and I didn't much like that. So that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, that sounds like it doesn't feel good.
But like if you're working for a company and you don't know about what their rules are regarding this, how do you go about getting permission? Like, how did you go about it?
So you mean like once you're in the company?
Yeah, once you're
like
in
you're
the
like,
company.
oh, I'm going to do this. So honestly, you just need to talk to HR, because usually they'll have something in place. It's either they let you do it and they have a system in place to help facilitate that in a legal way, or they have something in place that basically says no.
Did you have to get a written contract like on the side?
Yeah. It's a written contract called a hobby contract.
Yeah.
And it's the same in, like, I think it's a Swedish thing from what I can gather.
Yeah, or don't get caught.
Yeah, I didn't like when I worked.
I'm not promoting that.
I
mean, it's totally a thing, because I didn't like when I did my mentorships when I was still working for Ubisoft, right? I didn't ask for permission to do those things. So,
Nice.
But then again, like I did have obviously like media training and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Jeremy probably knows a little bit that I will not join a studio or a project if they don't allow me to do something on the end.
Yeah.
And I think he has a general information about some recent negotiation I've been doing for like a month or something, and I had to go back and forth a lot to get that permission to do stuff like lighting, button, course development and stuff. I recommend getting some acknowledgement very early on that you are allowed to do it, and it's legit, even if you get an email or some information that says that we agree that this doesn't include in the contract. Because it's harder to get people to change the contract, but it's easier to get them to acknowledge that we're not going to do X, Y, Z if you're doing any of these things. That's not to say they can't do it if they are malicious, or if they choose to do it afterwards, they can in some ways do it. But at the same time, legally by universal law, government law, people can't really interfere in your private life and what you do privately anyway. All you have to do is actually prove that you haven't done anything that's competitive. You haven't used their technology.
Yeah.
So you can still do it and get away with it, because legally you cannot really control someone's private life. Okay. Even though it's in the contract, it's mostly because of competition, trade secret, and so on. So as long as you can prove that, it tends to be okay, and it's not a problem in most cases, and in my experience too. We have a question by Marco before we lose it. Do you think it's hard finding lighting freelance jobs, since it's much more complex than, for example, doing a 3D pop instead? Do any of you want to answer that?
I mean, I don't know much about lighting as like I mean, it's technical. It's quite technical, right? But
it's kind of annoying, because you have to share everything with the lighting artist, in terms of like you have to share the game project. They need to have access to, if you're using Unreal, for example, they need to have the whole project, build it. They have. It's not really like, it's not like you can easily outsource something like that. Like a 3D prop is something you can send away. They don't have to see behind the curtain, so it's probably hard to freelance lighting for games unless it's made in very specific ways, right? Like, so if you're there's the police for the not talking about the mentorship contract.
Found out, Amit. They found out.
Someone called them and they used the stream as evidence, I think. I gotta go, guys. Bye.
Where was I? I don't even remember where I was. What was I saying?
Should stop drinking so much alcohol, man.
Alcohol, it's just some, man. It's been a rough week. Yeah. I don't remember where I was.
You lost it.
I lost it completely.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to doing freelancing for lighting.
Oh, right, that was the thing.
That's what we were talking about.
Right. So like it works if you have a game that kind of where you like, if you make the whole game in let's say Maya, right, and you're doing static lighting or like baked lighting, right, then you can just take the chunk out of the whole level and outsource that, right? So like back in the day, when I was working for Sony, for example, for older games, right, like Motorstorm and stuff like that, they had the whole level inside of Maya, right? So you could outsource the whole level as it is,
Yeah, you can give them a chunk. And they can
a whole chunk of the level, and then the whole level comes back done, essentially. But yeah, so there are some like that, but I would say it's not super easy to find those kind of opportunities.
So my opinion is it's easy. Because obviously I am a lighting artist at the moment. I think it's easy if you're good enough. And again, this is where we go back to what I was saying earlier about having not money as your side hustle, but reputation and respect as your side hustle. If you build reputation and respect, people are gonna go to quite an extent to give you that opportunity. For example, 2 months ago, I was looking for some extra stuff, and it was originally a full-time position. I said I can't do it, so they said that's fine. We'll offer you a freelance position. You can choose your time and everything, and just help us solve the problem. So people will give you that opportunity depending on your who you are and your experience and track record. But at the same time, most freelance opportunities these days goes to outsourcing companies. So if you get access to different outsourcing companies, you will get more access to the freelancing opportunity. Now, these outsourcing companies, they will not directly give you the opportunities. You're still competing maybe against one or two other freelance lighting artists because they obviously want the cheapest person, but there are opportunities out there. Now, if you team up with other people, so if you stay in touch with, if I stay in touch with, say, Jeremy and Chris did some freelancing and they had a project and they heard from the project that, hey, we need a lighting artist. So suddenly I'm part of, a group of team friends, and I get work that way as well because they are mentioning, hey, I know this guy or this person or this girl, so that's another way of getting things. So that's where people and people skills is very important. Okay, so I don't think it's hard. I think you need to look different places. Second, for freelancing, for lighting, my advice is not to look the same places as everyone else. So if you're willing, if just getting experience and some extra money, look at places where non-artists are looking for talent. That means different forums, different Twitter sphere within the Twitter and within the X LinkedIn, LinkedIn, Facebook groups. So go to places such as construction, architecture, hospital, airport. These people look for lighting artists too, but they are not in the game industry or the animation industry, so they don't necessarily know what to do or where to look. So a lot of money there. I've done it a few times when I'm short on cash, and also, but you might have to use a different software. And for example, the airport industry, they like to use Uni engine, so not Unity engine. Uni engine is very specific. So learning that and being active in that forum definitely gonna get you a lot of cash in as a lighting artist or as an artist generally. So go away from Unreal Engine, go away from Unity engine. Lots of money in different things. There's a engine called I don't remember. There's a specific engine for specific interior design architecture, and I only know this because I went on my business trips, because I do a lot of entrepreneurship. So I go to business meetings and business workshop, and I met this architecture person, and she was trying to learn lighting in this software. She didn't know how, so I thought, okay, maybe that's a potential course I can make for the company and get some money. So
interesting.
A lot of opportunities, but you just need the mindset and aptitude and attitude to kind of pay attention and think outside of the sphere, which I think young people are least likely to do. Because when I was young, I just wanted to do games, like didn't want to do anything
yeah, it's
else.
very focused on a specific
But as you grow older, you kind of understand, okay, there's more to what I'm trying to learn, and I got to pick up other skills, and you become more, intuitive in picking these things up, basically.
But you can also work as a consultant, right? You don't actually have to do the lighting. You can work as a consultant for their lighting artists, right? On how they should light a space or how they should handle lighting for a production, right? That obviously comes with, like, you have to be more experienced to do that, but it is an option.
Yeah, consulting. The question in chat, I don't even know how to.
Which one?
The
Keith? Flippo?
No. Oh, I didn't see Keith's. We can start with Keith's, but DPK.
Okay, I'll go Keith first.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about focusing on filling up an asset library for a place such as TurboSquid and others versus looking to just freelance? I'll let you guys talk about it first.
My gut feeling is that's difficult to fill now. Like, unless your content is good and you have a competitive price. Like,
I think
there's ranges now, right? So like if you're going to really big companies, there are really big outsourcing companies. We won't say names, of course, but like those assets can look really good. And if they have a price model that's quite high, you still have room in the lower bracket, right? To deliver similar content, maybe not as strong, or can be strong, but is competing at a price level that fits it's basically looking at the brackets and seeing where there could be a gap that you could fit into, or where there's the least amount of competition. At least that's what it feels like to me. I haven't done it myself, so there's that.
I've done that too, and it's exhausting because you're competing against studios that are doing it with the intention of just making that. So unless you are in part of that team, can you do it? Yes. The one I did and the ones I tried, I done 2 companies doing it. I think one of the assets are still there under Fat Ninja Studio on Unreal Marketplace, actually. The problem is, if you're gonna make it, as Jeremy is saying, it needs to be better. But more importantly, if you already have work experience, I recommend paying attention to what the 3D artist team, if you're not in a 3D artist team, this is what I do. I pay attention to what the 3D artist team are buying from the asset store to simplify their scenes, right? So if you're in a studio, they'll buy like asset packs and everything, and I'll pay attention to where they buy it, why they buy it, and I will use that information and knowledge to think, okay, how do you produce assets that companies will buy rather than individuals, right? Because companies do buy a lot of assets to simplify their workflow. If it's like a garbage can or something generic that's a waste of time, it's really good somewhere, they'll buy it. Or you need to make something really unique, so make an environment that's not been done before, or it's not been done in many years, and you can make a better and updated version. So is it possible? Yes, but again, we're not talking about easy solutions. There's no such thing as easy cash, easy side hustle. Anyone who tells that, especially anyone who takes money for telling you that, is lying. Okay, there's no easy way of making wealth, as I call it. You need to put an effort. It takes time. It takes discipline. So we're back to what Chris and I and Jeremy, especially Chris, discipline and doing things every day, non-stop, regardless, relentless is quite important when you do like asset library, anything that requires a third party person. Okay.
From my perspective, right? Like the most important thing as a like if you're a game developer wanting assets, right? You want consistency, right? You don't really want to go to different vendors, really, because they all have different ways they've set up their assets, right? Which means your internal team will have to fix them, which is a lot of money wasted. It takes a lot of time to do that, right? So you want to have a vendor that is reliable and does stuff the same way for all their packs, right? So that means, like, in general, I would say, like, if you're wanting to get into this, you'd want to deliver big kits or like big themes or whatever that has lots of assets in them made the same way, and then you plan like several kits made the same way,
and they can
with a clear intention, like these are made for this purpose, right? Like these are for like a third person type shooter game or something, right? So the specs is made for that, right? And make that very clear. So yeah, that's kind of the thing, and it takes time. It would take time to build up a whole kit like that, but that's essentially what everybody's wanting. Like even from like the indie sphere, right, up to like larger game developers, right? So, but yeah, lots of work essentially to get to that point, which is why essentially you'd want a team doing it. So it's hard when
that's
you're
kind of why teams have developed now.
Yeah, you kind of want to group together and tackle it.
But the thing with making assets is not as easy as it sounds. You have to support quite a few things. You have to go through a quite extensive process of getting it submitted. So if you've done it before, you'll know what I'm talking about, especially in Unreal and Unity stuff. There's quite a strict criteria you have to go through, and the quality, and depending on where you categorize it, there's different rules that you have to abide by, and if you don't, it doesn't go through. I think my attempt was like 4 times before I got it right, so it was quite a bit of back and forth with my teammates to get it right. Moving on to DPK, you simply asked, what if you're an extreme introvert? It doesn't matter.
This is on the other topic, right?
I don't think there's no such thing as introvert. So here's a different thing. These labels, throw it out the window. I was an introvert, and then I started doing business, and I went to the public speaking and doing pitches. That goes out the window. It's all about confidence, really. It's all about just having a healthy mindset about you. And instead of telling yourself limited thoughts that, oh, I'm an introvert, I can't do that, I'm not good at that, you just say, yeah, of course you can do it. There's no reason you couldn't. You're a human being. You have the talent. You have the skills. So why not, right? So instead of asking, what if you are an extreme introvert, ask yourself, what if you just did it? What if you just went on with your
You used
idea?
to be an introvert, Amit.
Yeah. I used to be an extreme introvert.
Yeah, I was also kind of introverted, right? But then you get forced into situations like, oh, you're getting a job in the games industry that forces you to have to be extroverted, right? Or like actually just become more open, like go talk to people. Like at a job, they'd be like, go talk to that guy. And then you just have to go talk to that guy, right? Like it's being professional, like.
I'm still an introvert. If you bore me or you're not saying anything interesting, I'm gonna become an introvert. But if you intrigue me, I'll be an extrovert. But if you're saying like normal stuff, normal things, normal conversation, it's not really. It's a
muggle conversation.
It's definitely something to work on, though. Like you have to. You can't just say, okay, I'm gonna not be an introvert anymore.
Yeah,
it's a gradual thing as well, right?
It's a gradual thing. It's reprogramming your mind. As with many things, we will continue discussing, hopefully in months to come. Everything you do takes time and effort. If you're not willing to take the time and effort, then okay, that's on you. But there's nothing that stops anyone of doing side hustle. There's nothing that stops anyone to do anything that any of us 3 has done. It's just, how much do you want to do it? Like, how badly do you want to experience it, and what's your motivation behind it, right? So I think extreme introvert, do it slowly. Find an extrovert in your case. Learn from the extrovert. Most extreme introvert have a tendency to attract at least one extreme extrovert. Okay. I have at least one very, very extreme extrovert that gets me to do stuff I wouldn't normally do, and it makes me more extrovert. It makes me more comfortable, and it makes me more confident. So you're always gonna find one like super extrovert just appreciates you. Like whether you're genuine or honest person, you have a trait that goes, I like this person for what you are, because they also don't have the same ability that you have, right? I'm playing a game. I'm not gonna say which game because you never know if the person are watching. But one of the person I play with is a highly extroverted, and he keeps talking and he keeps talking. It talks so much, I just want to take off my headset. It's so much talking. I don't even have to say anything for hours at end. It's just do, and all life stories, personal things, all the things. I'm like, holy cow! I get so frustrated at some point that I just want to say, I can't do it. I gotta go off. I do something else, right? So extroverts often needs to learn to listen, where I think introverts generally are very good listeners, and it's been proven over and over that introverts are better leaders because we take the time, we listen, and we give people a space to talk. Okay, so don't underestimate extreme intro as a negative thing. It is actually a positive thing, and apparently most of the world now is introvert anyway after COVID anyway. So
after COVID, I noticed I always thought I was an extrovert. because I'm quite. This is why I don't like the terms.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying
like,
label, not good.
No, it's but yeah, having COVID happen, man, I really learned that I get a lot more energy by resting. And not just socializing, like, because I love socializing, but it goes in waves, right?
Yeah, that's true. Let's just keep going. Apparently there's a lot of questions which we love, so we just stick to the questions for now. Do you think you should be at least a certain level, or could you do these things as a junior also? What do you two think?
I wouldn't suggest it as a junior. I mean, if you do it, you're going to start going through the gauntlet of the approval process to get content out, and that's part of it, right? You'll toughen up and learn through that, and then you'll start to be able to do it. So technically you could. I think you'll have a smoother experience if you're intermediate, and if you're senior, it'll probably be even smoother.
I would just personally, like, if you're a junior and you're wanting to do this, like, I wouldn't say if you're a junior, go become a mentor. But like, if you're wanting to release assets or whatever, then just gather more experienced people, just ask them questions on how things should be done or made, that, because you're a junior, you're wanting to work, right? That's the main thing, right? How to make a thing and advice on how to make it, you can get from elsewhere, right? You don't have to know that. You will internalize that as well. Like, you're learning from other people, right? So I would just do it, and then if you have questions, just ask people, like, do you think this is a good idea, doing like this or that, and then go from there.
Doing business, not side hustle necessarily, you don't need to know everything. You just need to know how to enable people to be the best and do what they want to do, and money comes your way. Okay, so it's not as complicated as it sounds. It just takes a lot of energy and time and commitment, which obviously affects your family if you have family and these things. So you have to be very careful with committing, and that's why you need good, trustworthy people who can kind of deal with that kind of challenges that you're gonna have as well. As for doing it as a junior, you could. Again, that's branding and how you market yourself. You could do it, and you could only do it to a students, right? So you could just focus on student. Now, the problem with, at least if you're still referring to asset development, and I think I speak for all of us, but especially for lighting artists, it's very difficult to find good asset that is actually correctly made in terms of base albedo, value, PBR, and that works well with lighting. Which is why when I talk about lighting with lighting artists, is you need to pick up those skills and not trust all the assets you get online, because it is not perfect. You do need to troubleshoot, and you need to know how to deal with that. So that's the second challenge when you do assets, is do you know for sure it's industry standard and good, or are you going to be one of the people who make kind of stamp approval? So that's a business idea right there. What if you start a company and you're maybe with someone who's knowledgeable and respectable, you do like a stamp approval for assets? So people come to you, they submit the asset to you, and they say, can you check if it's like on the level it should be? They pay you, you get the stamp approval from ranking from A to F, and then they can decide if they want to submit it with that approval. People know exactly that it's been approved by your business with these X people, and then you have money coming this way. So there's no, hey, I just thought about a business out of the blue that I never thought about before.
Yeah, it's pretty genius.
So you can do that, and the people will do that because you have communities like Rookies. They do kind of that already. They're giving you a stamp approval of you being as an individual. We do that for collection of cards, coins. We do that for certain things already. Michelin star for restaurants. These are all rankings. There's nothing that stops you from starting a business that ranks assets. I mean, that's a brilliant idea. So good luck. Someone do that. I'm sure it will be a very good way of being sure it's up on the level, right? So ideas are there.
Yeah. Sorry, I was having a more general question about the Rookies. So they give a ranking to people?
Yeah, I mean, the whole concept of Rookies, obviously you get the certificate, you get notice, and then you get the approval. So it doesn't have to be a ranking per se, but it's still a stamp of approval that you got through Rookies. And right. it's a bigger deal now than it used to be before, because that's what they've been building up towards. and there's no reason you can't do that for assets. Like, why haven't anyone who has the trust to do the approval process, why haven't anyone done that? I mean, that's a interesting concept to try out, I would say. I would do it if I had the skills to double check all the assets and be sure, but I don't. But we could do it with a couple of people. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll do it just us. Who knows? I like
think
the
it's
idea.
tricky, man, because like assets, it depends on the project, right? Like, so it's like you'd have to set up.
A shitty asset is a shitty asset, no?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, but industry. Okay, this is a whole other tangent. But industry standard is like there's a standard because everyone kind of follows it, right? The moment a studio decides that they need their own standard, now it's kind of out the window, right?
Yeah, but that's not your problem. Your problem is making sure that people who buy from asset store knows what standard it is and what criteria it is. So,
true. I mean that goes wider even.
Yeah. So you when you buy an asset, you have the stamp, and it goes, okay, it's a C stamp. So what's the C stamp? And then you have information. This is C because of this reason. If it's stylized, it gets a different rank. So it's not complicated. It's doable.
But it's self-moderated already. Like if you look at the Unreal Market store, right? Like the people who buy it review it, right?
Yes, and then the people would still review it, and then you get.
I mean, they have no clue if it's good or not, really, but it is community.
Exactly. So people are very easy in giving reviews. You want like a good veteran team kind of reviewing it, I think. All right, I'm 3 introverted by nature, but you're doing my extrovert when you need it. I was pretty introverted a few years ago as well, but I'm really coming out of my shell now that I'm studying and such. That's very good. Let's not forget that being introvert is not the same as being shy or socially anxious and insecure. My biggest weakness is the fact I don't like small talk. You start small talking me, I know it's important. It's a very good at building relationship, but still, I'm like, I'd rather not. Say something interesting, catch my attention. You do small talk. I'm like, come on. So Jeremy says, okay, sure, GD. I think that's what saying intro is to minimizing. Thank you, Jeremy, for typing. Sebastian says, I think with side hustlers, I'm still on the fence with them. I think it would be much more valuable to find a new program on niche missing from your team and put time in that. Sure, why not? So we have a question here, I think maybe. Do you feel like certain styles are more wanted both on marketplace for asset kits, realistic, high realistic, or low poly stylized? Are you guys doing market research? Are you guys using us to use our knowledge to do your market research? That's again 30% revenue our way. Come on.
I said right after that, I said research is your best friend, right? You got to see what's out there, what's doing well. Is it like you want to build this kit? I mean, we talked about this a while back. Like you want to build this asset kit, and then you go on the marketplace and there's 30 of them, whole kits. Why? No. Like you could, but maybe it won't even be seen because everyone else is looking at the rest of the kits.
It's definitely saturated, I think, and you really need to be specific on what you do. And again, I do agree that it needs to be an asset pack rather than a single item. So what you could do is you could do an asset pack for a certain price, and then you do the single ones and you make it more expensive. So here's pricing knowledge, pricing strategy. You do that on purpose. So when someone looks at the single one, they're least likely to buy it because it costs more. And then the bundle has the highest purchase chance because it's a bit more affordable, right? So here we talk about pricing, and that goes for freelancing. It goes for how you present your freelancing and freelancing packages as well, and anything really. You need to understand pricing and when people are more likely to buy, right? So $199, people can take the credit card and buy. Anything over, they are a little bit thinking. Anything over $999, they have to go to the spouse. Normally, they have to ask the partner if it's okay. They buy something. Could be corals, it could be anything. Okay, so understanding this is quite important when it comes to side hustle and doing anything. So people do ArtStation a lot. They do a lot of things on ArtStation courses and everything. Again, it's saturated. And when the minute you have cheap price, people might buy it. Then you have to remember, are people watching it? Are they giving you an honest review and recommendation? If not, does the money actually mean anything to you? So we go back to reputation and respect. So my value is I rather have 10 purchases and they actually go through everything, and I get one good review, rather than 100 purchases and 5 people go through it and I get no good review, right? So you have to decide what kind of person you are and what value you want when you do any kind of side hustle, right? So that's, again, side information when it comes to your asset kits and everything, and doing the research for it.
There's one topic I wanted to get to before we end, because we've got like 10 minutes to go.
Yeah,
we're just blasting on this.
I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice.
Yeah. So the topic of taxes and suggestions on managing the income. So I don't know if you did, Chris. I think you did, but we poked people and we're like, hey, if you freelance, tell us about it. What do you look at? What do you pay attention to? And there's things like what's your monthly income? What country are you in? What taxes are you paying? Each country is going to have different taxes. The suggestions for how you deal with that, things like health insurance, what that means depending on where you're at as well. Like with health insurance, it varies country to country. Some countries it's covered outright. Other countries, like I think it was Germany, where you have an artist social insurance. So it's like a package for health and pension insurance for you if you qualify as an artist, which is typically, I'm reading this verbatim right now, which is typically the case for game devs of all colors. But yeah, the issue is freelance is bound by law in Germany, so you have to have health insurance. So if you're freelancing, you have to have health insurance because you aren't working a social insured job. And that's just Germany. Like Sweden, we talk taxes. Sweden's not a great place to be starting up something or freelancing, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, I think Sweden is straight up 50% tax.
It's good if it's your only job, right? Then
yes.
It's fine, right? The problem is if you have a full-time job,
if it's your side,
and you're wanting more on the side, because as soon as you hit, the bracket, when you go on top, you get taxed quite a lot. So it's kind of not worth it in some aspects. If for me, for example, it's been in the industry for a long time, right? I have quite a high pay, already my salary, right? So if I wanted to do side stuff, I would have to, for it to be worth it, for me, I would have to push my own price point quite high. And that's only because I'm in Sweden, right? So it's,
Yeah, so you're saying price point quite high. That way, when it gets cut in half, it's not as...
Yeah, because I would end up getting 50+% tax of everything I earn, above, my salary. So it's, that's
and
quite
Bulgaria's got 10% tax.
Yeah, exactly. So
whoa.
It's 10%. It's 10% corporate tax.
Corporate tax, yes.
But it's 5% withholding tax on dividends. So you can, if you do dividends, you save 5%.
So is this your managing the income part of the sentence?
I'll give my 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I give my 10 countries, and I want to give all the information out because there is a course in the future for this. But I give you some general information about certain countries and what you should pick depending on what you're doing. So Singapore has 17% corporate tax rate, but there's a tax exemption for startups. So you skip it if you start up. The effective tax rate for Singapore is 4.25% on the first 100,000 Singapore dollars, and is 0% on foreign source income that is not remitted. So that basically means if you're coming money from outside, you don't have to pay anything. So a good thing to know. Obviously, the United States of America is a very good place to do things. It's pass-through tax entity. Not going to go into detail what it means, but non-US citizens, which is me in my case, a resident with a US LLC, which I have access to, can have earnings that are not taxed. So I can live here and I can not pay tax as long as I don't live in the US. Only subject to US tax if you engage in the trade or in business in the US. So any customers I have in the US, I tax. Anyone outside, I do not tax. Okay. Very good for solo entrepreneurs, startups, self-employed with an international presence. All right. Bulgaria. So you mentioned the 10 corporate. 5% withholding the tax, but dividends received by the holding company are tax exempt. So you start a holding company, you have the company, and you avoid tax altogether. And also, so there's a wide network of double tax treaties. So certain countries, they don't have double tax treaties. You should check it up. But Bulgaria has double tax treaties, so does Norway. So if I'm a Norwegian citizen, nationality, and I have a company in Bulgaria, I can only pay taxes one place, so I can pick the one that's obviously useful for me. The United Arab Emirates is obviously a good place as well. 0% corporate tax rate for 50 free zones. Won't get into detail what that is. They also have an entrepreneur hub, which is basically means that there's a lot of facilities and exemptions for entrepreneurs because they want entrepreneurs, and you get the resident visas. But with the United Arab Emirates, keep one thing in mind: you can never ever become a citizen of the United Arab Emirates unless you're born and bred there. So there's a disadvantage of doing that. Okay. Cyprus, 12.5 corporate tax rate. Payment of dividend does not attract any withholding tax, which means you don't pay any tax on dividends. Okay. Entryway to Europe. So if you're from the US, Canada, it's a very good way of getting access to Europe and the European market, and they're very friendly to the business market. Malta is another one. Unfortunately, Malta has 35% corporate tax rate. They have an imputation system. Won't go into what that is, but you can get refund of your dividends if your receipts, and the effective tax rate is 5%. So it's also a good place to do things. Romania, I have a lot of friends in Romania, so it's 60% corporate tax rate. They have something called a micro enterprise scheme turnover, which is 1 million euro, 3% tax based on net sales, and then there is other exemptions there too. And the last one is Czech Republic. Freelancer benefits only. Personal income tax rate is 15%. You can do a lump sum deduction from 40 to 60% based on where you are, and the rest tax is 15%. And yeah, there's a lot of things. What I've skipped primarily at the moment is the requirements and the paperwork and your what you need to pay or what you need to do to get that access. Okay. So those are some of my main countries that I like to do these tax businesses in. And the last thing I do want to point out, which a lot of people don't know, there's a difference between being a resident of a country and tax resident of a country. So you can avoid taxes no matter where you're in the world, if you know how to do it, which I won't get into detail. And then you can pay taxes in other countries. And in some cases, you can avoid taxes altogether legally. Or I also want to add. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to navigate taxes and income. Even if you don't do side hustles, you can at least save money if you understand these things. Okay. So hopefully that was useful. At least you get a brain melt, but you have the video anyway to listen through it. Okay. All right. And if you have further questions before we start, cutting down,
winding down, yeah.
No more questions.
How do you know all that stuff, Amit?
As I occasionally tell, I pay a lot of money for my mentors, business mentors. I pay quite a bit to get that knowledge and information and get trained in it. So that's how I know it. But you don't have to pay for it. You can just join me in my mentorship or any collaboration for that matter, and you can get that information for. You don't have to pay £10,000 for it. You can pay a little bit, and hopefully I return my investment of this knowledge.
God!
So this is just some of the knowledge I have thought that's very useful, and I think understanding economy and money is very useful. Like when things such as recession is happening and the inflation happening, is good to understand why it's happening. It's good to know where you invest your money, right? So we haven't talked about that. We haven't talked about investing money in stocks, crypto, or whatever, right? There are other ways of income sources as well, which is more unpredictable in a way, I suppose. Doesn't require you to do much except investing, and that's a different topic as well. Any final words by you, Chris or Jeremy?
No, that was pretty intense.
Get an accountant.
Yes.
Get an accountant.
Yeah. 100%.
Because if you're like me and had my brain melted, right? Talking about taxes in general, right? It's usually very much worth it getting an accountant to just, like, if you're serious about the freelance, if you're serious about all this stuff, right? Just do the work, have the accountant deal with the rest, right? So it is in the end a small price to pay for not having all that headache.
Yeah. And the only price you guys have to pay is like, subscribe, share, and leave a positive comment. That's the only price you guys have to pay. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate the questions and attendance. Quite a few people joined today. Apparently, you guys are really eager to know about money. And yeah, this is definitely a useful topic. I would imagine.
Side hustle, man. We didn't even talk about
our side hustles.
No, the life balance and time management.
You don't need a life balance. I'll say
again,
one
you're
thing.
asking the wrong people about balance.
So I'll say one thing when it comes to life balance, life and work. It's part of life, right? It's not a separate entity. You spend 8 hours at least in your day job. You know, separating it is a very odd mentality. I think it brings more pain when you separate these things rather than just acknowledging it's part of life, it's part of your lifestyle. How do you make it work with other things? And that's why remote work is popular for a lot of people. They can work, they can take care of their kids, they can do other stuff, you know. So I think that's the key thing. Don't separate it, because
we have another podcast on this as well, on life balance, if you want to expand on that further.
Yes,
like you
can also date people in finance, right? So to help you. Or if you want to start an outsourcing studio, maybe you should, get a relationship with other artists.
I do not condone this strategy, but it is a valid. That's how people get visa, I guess, as well. So that's another strategy there. If you're getting into the country, you're not getting visa sponsorship. Just get a girlfriend or boyfriend in the country, and legally marry them. In the UK, if you live with someone for 2 years, apparently you are considered cohabiting married. I don't know what it is, but you can legally, you're married in a way, so you get the same opportunities if you live together in 2 years. I learned that yesterday.
Common law.
Yeah, so I'm not moving in with anyone. I don't want to accidentally become married. Thank you guys for watching. If you have more questions, again, please leave a comment on topics you would like us to talk about, or a general idea.
Awesome.
And that is really helpful. It is quite exhausting to think about what to do every stream, and I'm sure you guys have questions, or maybe you want some more in-depth, as long as it's not about law or HR, because I don't think we're that knowledgeable about that topics. We should be good. And have a good day, and I shall end the stream and talk a little bit with Jeremy and Chris, and then I will move over to my next meeting. And thank you, much love, bye toodles.